S square is G mu dx mu, you all know. And in the case of Friedman-Robertson-Walker metric, it can be written in this way. So I just consider the case when k is equal to 0. The special curvature is 0. So you can write this way dr square plus r square and some this angular part is there. And then basically you can define something called conformal time, eta, in this way. Okay. And this conformal time can be used for some length scale also, which we call horizon. It is the eta at t, at time t you can define horizon, eta t. It's the co-moving size of the horizon, it's co-moving horizon. So it means there is no effect of expansion on it. C dt by at, and you can play around this thing and can make integration variable a rather than t. Or if you are more interested, you can make it z also. You know what is the relationship between a and z. So it's very important physical quantity. This the size of co-moving size of horizon. That's one scale. Second thing is the Hubble co-moving Hubble length, c by a h a. If it's just c by h a, then it's just an ordinary Hubble length. If you put a here, you are dividing by scale factor. It's co-moving size of Hubble radius or Hubble scale. So why these two scales are important? So if there are 2 points in the universe, then causal communication between them can be established. Means signal can reach from one point to another point, and any physical process can operate at any time t if they are separated by a distance less than Hubble distance. Okay. So that is the. But again, what may happen that if 2 points are within Hubble volume at some point of time, okay, so that means causal communication is possible between these 2 points at that point of time. And if they are outside, then this causal communication is not possible at that point of time. But it may happen that when the universe expands, these 2 points may establish causal communication in future. Okay. So you should think in this way that within the Hubble volume, things keep coming in and going out. That depends on the expansion. That's an important concept. Second thing is this co-moving size of horizon. So if 2 points are outside of this co-moving horizon, then they can never establish causal communication with each other, no matter how long you wait. So forever they are outside of any causal communication. So that is important. So there is a slight difference between these two. Hubble distance, in future communication is possible, but in this case communication is not possible. Now you know the solutions of Friedman equations for radiation dominated universe, matter dominated universe, cosmological constant dominated universe. You can actually plug this function in these integral and these things and just try to see that actually how this c by a h a changes with various epochs, means when the radiation is dominated or matter is dominated. You can do this exercise and you can repeat the exercise for this eta also. So it turned out to be that if you put this radiation case, then this is how the Hubble length changes with time. So basically it becomes smaller and smaller. So in radiation dominated universe, Hubble volume or the Hubble length increases linearly with A. So now there is a problem here. What is the problem? If we look in the sky at 2 opposite points, okay, then we see the same CMB temperature. Same means within the limits of our fluctuations. So more or less it's the same temperature. I mean, there are fluctuations of 10 to the power minus 5. The question is that these 2 points on the sky, they were never in causal communication with each other in the past. If we just follow our usual cosmology dominated by radiation, okay, Okay, one thing is that any length scale grows at a_t and that length scale. Okay, that's why it is called the scale factor. But if we consider the co-moving distance between object or co-moving length scales, you can just factor this thing out, this at, and then it essentially remains the same. So co-moving distance between two objects, it doesn't change with the expansion of the universe, it remains the same. So this is exactly what is happening. This is a length scale which I called L2, and there is another scale called L1. These are length scale, L1 is smaller than L2. This is the time thing, and this is the usual radiation dominated universe. So basically you can see that this length scale L1, which is inside the Hubble volume right now, was not inside Hubble volume in the past. It goes outside the Hubble volume. And so the L2. So it turned out that most of the scales of scales which are relevant for us, like the scales of CMB, scale of large scale structure, they all go outside this Hubble volume. Now the question is that if 2 points on the sky were never inside the Hubble volume in the past, then how come they are having the same temperature? So that is the question. I mean, how they communicated with each other that let us have our temperature 2.725 degree Kelvin, because they were never inside the Hubble volume. So this problem is called horizon problem. Okay, and it was a serious problem. How to explain this? So in 1981, one idea was proposed, which is called inflation by Alan Guth and other guys. So they tried to solve this thing by invoking some form of accelerated expansion, or rather than exponential expansion. So before this radiation dominated era starts and universe expand in this way, at proportional to t to power half. Before that, I mean, it's an hypothesis, it's an assumption that there was an epoch when the universe was expanding almost like exponentially, e to power h0t, where h is a constant. Okay, so there are many peculiar properties of this exponential expansion. It actually helps horizon. It helps to solve this horizon problem in this way. Let us look at there. If you compute this Hubble length for this type of expansion, you will find that actually it becomes small. Okay, rather than growing, it becomes small. So basically, there was an epoch in which expansion was of such type that the size of this co-moving Hubble length was actually decreasing with time. Okay, so some sort of, I can call it horizon also. People call sometimes this thing is also called horizon. So horizon becomes small and small in the inflationary regime, and all the scales which are of our interest present, they all come within that small horizon, and they can establish causal communication with each other. And then there is no problem for this thing that why the 2 points on the sky, they have different temperature. So horizon problem is solved by invoking this idea of inflation. Okay. And of course there is a course on inflation after 2-3 days. I think somebody is giving a full course on inflation. So you will go into detailed technicality of that, what it happens. But I just want to highlight one more thing, that as a side effect of inflation we get something very interesting, and that is the inertial condition for CMB and isotropies and structure formations. So we always say that in the beginning there were some fluctuations, primordial fluctuation, very small, which grew due to gravity in the case of structure formation, and in the case of CMB they more or less remain the same, they don't grow much. But the question is that, I mean, how these primordial fluctuations were created and what type of fluctuations were these? Okay, so inflation actually gives you a mechanism for creating these fluctuations. So I will explain that firstly these fluctuations are created in space-time metric, okay, and then they are later on converted into fluctuation of matter field, photon field, and all other things. So inflation gives us two very interesting things. One is the Hubble, it solves the horizon problem. It gives the initial condition for structure formation or galaxy formations. So that's okay. One thing is that now, like you are doing this structure formation course also. So there are fluctuations. You can decompose them at Fourier modes or fluctuation at different scales. Okay, like you said, the power spectrum. What does it mean that at different k values, what is the strength of these fluctuations? That's what you are talking about. So basically, you decompose these fluctuations into these Fourier modes. Now, how they grow? Actually, it critically depends on whether these modes are outside horizon or inside horizon. Okay, so there is a complete theory of that. You have fluctuations of different weight, like you write delta x, this structure formation from you write this delta k, and then sometimes you actually use this p delta, you write this in the power spectrum. So power spectrum can be like something of these things, whatever it is. So at different scale, what is the strength of perturbations? So how they will grow depends on whether they are inside the horizon or outside the horizon. That's one thing you have to keep in mind. Second thing is that, as you can see, that in inflationary regime, the length scales, they go outside horizon. You can see that this scale is leaving horizon here. Okay, so larger scale is leaving earlier and smaller scale at later, but smaller scale is coming inside horizon earlier. So that's how it is happening. Now, in fact, I have made this plot just up to the radiation thing, but I can make it further also in matter-dominated era. Okay, so you can see that some of the modes actually they will enter the horizon in radiation-dominated era, and some of the modes will enter in matter-dominated era. Now, how they will grow critically depend on this fact that when they enter the horizon. Okay, because you will study in this thing in some other courses that growth of fluctuations is different in radiation-dominated universe than in a matter-dominated universe. Like linear theory, you were studying this thing that this delta goes as A, is proportional to A in that. So, two things which I will repeat again is that whether a mode is inside horizon or outside horizon, that's very important. Second thing, when it enters the horizon, that is also very important. So that will decide its future. Okay, that is the thing, and then I will again. So we were talking about Boltzmann equation. This is the Boltzmann. I will just leave this thing here, then again I will again come on that issue. We were looking at this equation, and I told you that fluctuations in this distribution function, they give rise to fluctuation in CMB temperature. Okay, but we will explain how they are actually related. And the left hand side is it represents the effect of gravity on the distribution function f. And the right hand side represents the effect of collisions. Collisions are primarily Compton scatterings between free electrons and photons. Okay. So yesterday we tried to work out the collision term, which you can see here for Compton scattering, and I explained this thing. And then I said that under this condition, when electrons are actually considered non-relativistic in the sense that energy different in this way. Okay. So you do. Okay, this part I leave as an exercise, it is there in textbook. That Dirac delta function for energy can be written in this way. You can see that the energy of photon plus energy of electron before, this is the energy of photon and electron after the collision. It remains the same. So this condition will enforce that, and then there are some properties of this Dirac delta function. You can expand it around this thing p minus p prime. So basically we are some sort of, okay, there are two things: scattering between electron and photons. Then that can change just the direction of photon, or that can actually change the frequency also. So both the things are possible. Like Thomson, Thomson scattering is there and the Compton scattering is there. So it's like expansion around the Thomson scattering, when actually the frequency is not changed or the momentum is not changed, but just the direction is changed. And here it is. You can just, this is the perturbed distribution function ftxp, and this is the unperturbed perturbation function, which is nothing but the Bose-Einstein distribution function. So perturbed thing is this unperturbed plus this thing. I mean, you can just mental calculation, you can just see that it looks just like Taylor expansion, nothing more. I mean, it's just, this is the difference thing, and this is one gradient and all this thing, and we are just keeping the linear term here. Okay, so you can see that now we have equation for f, Boltzmann equation, and if we plug this expression there, you can get expression for actually theta also, which is what we are interested in. And this theta is also called the brightness function. So you do, I mean, I'm not going in detail of this thing, that you plug this thing here, okay, and do the calculation, and it turned out to be an expression of this type for collision on. I will explain it. What does it mean? Okay, this is the Thomson cross section is coming here. This is the number density of free electrons. So, for example, if Ne is 0, there are no free electrons, then there is no collision. Okay, this all goes away. This theta 0 is the monopole part of it. We had something, this theta t xp. Okay, what it means? You are sitting at a position x at time t, looking along direction p prime, and you are finding this temperature. This is the physical meaning of this theta. Okay, it's a delta t by t along direction p at point x at time t. And if you just integrate it out, the whole angular space d omega, what you get is called monopole. Actually, you can compute all sorts of dipole and all other higher pole by formula. It's like multiple decomposition of the temperature field. I mean, if you have a function of this type, like if you have a function of fx, you can Fourier decompose it. In the same way, if you have a function on the sky, on a two sphere, you can decompose into multipoles. Theta L mu. 0 will be monopole, 1 will be dipole, and all sorts of this thing will be. So, what is the point is that in order to study this theta, we can study these things also separately. Like in this case, we are interested in delta x, how delta x is growing. But if we study this delta k, so that should be okay. So what are the various expressions? This is the differentiation with respect to P of the unperturbed distribution function. This is the cross section. This is the monopole part. This is the temperature and isotropy. And okay, this term, what it is? P hat is the direction along which the photons are moving. This VV is the velocity of electrons. Okay. So when electrons and photons are scattering, so there may be a situation when electrons are in rest and there may be situation when electrons are actually moving. When electrons are moving, then motion of electron will create a dipole also. So this term is due to the motion of electron. Okay, physically what does it mean? When electrons do not have a bulk velocity, Compton scattering try to drive temperature and isotropies toward the monopole. If this thing is 0, and you can see that this guy is positive, this guy is negative. So now we are in the regime when electrons and photons are scattering with each other. Okay, so it's before decoupling or recombination. We are in that regime. So if scattering is efficient enough, it will not allow higher multipoles to get generated. The only multipole which will survive or which will sustain is the monopole. Okay, you can just think that electrons and photons, they are scattering all the time. Okay, so monopole is what is possible. If there is dipole or higher, this will just wiped away. It will not remain there. So before photons actually decouple, we just need to worry about just monopole thing and maybe dipole. We don't have to worry about all these higher multipoles which may be created later on and which are present in the present universe. If we look at the CMB sky, there are multipoles up to r is equal to few thousand, they are non-zero. Okay. So now this is our collision term, and this expression was computed when we completely ignored the fact that Compton scattering depends on the direction also. If you remember the expression for Compton scattering, there is 1 plus cos theta and some factor is there. Okay, so it has a directional nature. If that thing is okay, if direction is there, generally velocity means a dipole. Okay, you are moving in some direction, so there is a dipole. So this is exactly what it is, theta 2. Then we get one extra term, this P2 mu is actually legendary polynomial. We get theta 2. And if there is polarization also, so there will be coupling between temperature and polarization. I will not go into detail of that, I will just limit myself to this one. That if directional nature is also taken into account, then this will be the expression. And you can go back to your Jackson's electrodynamics and can find a lot of things about this P2 mu and electrodynamics, how things actually happen. The dipole, what is the expression for, what is P0 mu, what is P1 mu, what is P2 mu. So it's like potential multipolar expansion, and they come in other places also. So that is it. Collision part is done. We have an expression for this collision part. Okay. Now we have to bother about the left hand side. We will pick this thing at some point later on when we will write a complete. Now let us come at the this part. How gravity is actually changing the photon distribution function. What are its effects? So this is what how the matrix is written, as I explained you, for the case when spatial curvature is 0. Okay. So this G mu nu here, which is second rank symmetric tensor. So it has 10 components. So if we are perturbing the matrix, then at least we need 10 variables to specify it. Okay. And there is a theorem called decomposition theorem, which says that if we have matrix perturbations, we can decompose them into 3 types of perturbation called scalar perturbation, vector perturbation, and tensor perturbation. And they don't interfere with each other. In the sense, if in the beginning we have just scalar perturbation, they will just grow. It will not happen that they will create tensor perturbation later on, or other way around. Okay. So it makes our life easy. At least in this class, we can just pick the scalar perturbation. They are of the simplest type. And it's in detail that actually how you characterize these scalar perturbations it depends on gauge, something called gauge. So there are different gauges, and in different gauges you can write them in a different way. There is no unique way. There is one gauge called conformal Newtonian gauge, or whatever textbook thing. In that case, actually, scalar perturbations can be characterized by this way. This is a metric for scalar perturbation. It has two functions, scalar functions. One is called psi x t. Okay, now you have x and t. You have a space time, and there is psi at every point of time. And second is called phi x t. This psi x t is nothing but it's like Newtonian gravitational potential. If you have seen many other metric also, you can Schwarzschild and many other metrics, you can see that actually whatever comes here can be related to Newtonian potential also. And this is special. And this comes due to GR thing. It actually represents the perturbation in special curvature. Okay, so that thing is not in the Newtonian gravitational thing. Here it's phi x t, it's a perturbation in the Newtonian curvature. And now we have completely characterized scalar perturbation by two functions, psi and phi. Now what we do? We are here. We can do one simple thing. Okay, df by dt, total derivative, can be written in this way. Okay, because f depends on x, p and t. When I write here I mean vector. When I write here I mean vector basically. So del f by del t plus del f by del xi dx by dt plus this thing and this thing. Okay, now forget about the right hand side part. We are just focusing on the left hand side at the moment. Okay, then how the metric is coming into picture? What to do with the metric? You can see that there is something called dxi by dt. Okay, it can be written by dxi by d lambda and dx0 by d lambda, where x is time and xi is position vector. I mean, in GR it's very common to write in this way. Any trajectory is parameterized by one parameter, it's called lambda. It can be written by pi by p0. Okay, so this is it's sorry, it should be small p. Okay, this is small p and this guy is capital P. Capital P means this four momentum thing. And yeah, when we write small p, then we mean special thing, and when we write capital, we means actually the full thing. So it's the full thing. When we write p, capital P, has the full four momentum. So that's one thing. So here we need pi, we can compute that from here. I'm not doing this thing, that may be left as an exercise. Second part is dpi by dt, which looks like force, rate of change of momentum. But in GR we don't have that equation like F is equal to dpi by dt type of. What we have in GR is this equation, geodesic equation. Okay, so you can get that equation from this equation, and it is again a lengthy exercise, a bit of, so I am not doing it, but it's a straightforward exercise, it's not complicated. So what you have to do, I think people who are familiar with GR must know this pipeline. You have G mu nu, from this you can compute gamma, from you can compute as R alpha, beta, gamma, delta, whatever. Then you can compute R alpha, beta also, and then you compute this small r also, then you compute Einstein tensor also G. So it's just a tutorial exercise that if I give you a metric, just a metric, this equation, and I ask you for computing all these things, you should be able to compute them. without any help or without anything extra. So, I mean, this exercise worth to do and to learn GR basically. You just write any metric, whatever you have. You can write Friedman-Robertson water metric also. You can repeat this exercise with that also. Anyway, so if you take the zero component of this equation and play around with that, okay, then you can actually get an expression for f, which I will show later, just here. Okay, here I showed you that actually one should be down, one should be up here, but it's just a typo. Okay, so you can, I mean, you can contract this capital P mu with P mu. It will be a scalar, it will be a number, and you do it. So this is G mu nu up. For down thing, you have to follow the this tensor rule, and you can actually compute P0 is P into 1 minus psi. So this is the zeroth component of photon 4 momentum, and keeping in mind this metric, okay, and you can compute Pi also in this way. Again, it's a exercise, it's given in Dodelson's textbook also. Okay, so this is just calculation, it's nothing very profound. You compute, you have P0, you have Pi. So in fact, as I told you that this thing will depend on Pi by P0, capital Pi by P0. So you can directly get this thing for you. You need this thing for here. And if you do this thing, dxi by dt, as I have already written, it turns out to be this way. Okay, velocity depend on the psi and phi in the perturbed matrix. Okay, and the direction is along the direction of the motion of photon. And as I told you that you use this geodesic equation, just play around with the zeroth component, and you know all these are the formulas. Even I don't remember beyond this thing. Like here we have very complicated formula for this R with 4 indices. So, but this thing can be remembered. You just compute all this guy, and you turn out to be this way: 1 by P dP by dt. Now you have computed this part, you have computed this part. You just plug them, and you get this thing. You get dF by dt is delta F by dt, this thing, and this whole thing. Okay. Now this left hand side part, it depends on these potentials phi inside scalar for scalar perturbation. If you just put them 0, then the equation which you will get will be for the case when there are no perturbations. It will be a simple equation. And in fact, it's worth to solve further that what happens with these things, that if universe is just expanding and has this Friedman-Robertson water matrix, how this thing will change. For example, if you start with equilibrium distribution function. So we have got this df by dt, and then as I told you that we expand this thing, and then okay, now I just highlight this thing. We can expand it up to higher and higher order, and we are free to consider 0th order perturbation, first order, second order, whatever order we are interested in. If we are interested in 0th order perturbation, that simply means we are stopping just here. We will not go beyond first order. Linear order we will go up to here. Second order we will go up to higher. Fortunately, we don't have to go to very higher order, because CNV temperature fluctuations are very small, 10 to the power minus 5. And again, think that they don't grow like fluctuations in matter field. Fluctuation in matter field grow due to gravity, but fluctuation in photon field, they don't grow. So linear is good enough. Let us look at the 0th order solution. So 0th order collision term is 0. Okay, there are no collision. And those potential things are also not there. So you just play around that equation, the full When you put the left hand side and right hand side together and then take the assumption of linear term, then you actually get this thing. Temperature of CMB falls at 1 by AT, and you may be familiar with this thing also, but in other courses also how the temperature of CMB changes. For example, if I say the temperature of CMB at today is 3 degree Kelvin, then what was its temperature at when the universe was 1000 times smaller? It will be 1000 times of that, it will be 3000. Okay, but it's at linear order. What about first order? And this is the equation for first order, and we are very much interested in this equation. We are interested in finding out how the fluctuation in CMB grow. Okay, maybe linearly, but how they grow. And that is given by this thing, this Boltzmann equation. Now this is our full Boltzmann equation. This theta equation was for f. We get equation for theta because we take the linear approximation, and in linear case you can see that f is directly related to theta. Okay, so it should not be a surprise that how come we are getting a equation for theta. This is the collision part, and this is the collisionless part. This is monopole, this is the general anisotropy, this is due to the motion of electron, dipole this thing, and this is due to the coupling between polarization and temperature fit, and direction dependence of Compton escape rate. And this equation is called the brightness equation. And in terms of conformal time, the full Boltzmann equation can be written in this way. So I am not doing this exercise, I have defined what the conformal time is. Here the differentiation with respect to ordinary time, you can go with respect to conformal time, you get this equation. Nothing changes, I mean all the terms are here, you can see that all the terms, just prefactors may change for few of the terms. Like NE sigma T, here you can take NE sigma T A has come here due to that. Now the whole business of CMB theory itself is actually to solve this equation numerically. It may look very innocent, okay, what is the element, just what's the differential equation, just put into computer and solve it. But there is a serious problem, because like this phi and psi, they themselves change with time, and the universe is expanding, phi and psi are also changing. So you have to solve for them also. Okay, and the densities of other species are also changing. They are changing the metric. Metric is changing the density. It's all sorts of coupled system, and it will turn out to be that you actually have a set of 10 equations to solve rather than just one equation, because everything is coupled to other things. And sometimes it's useful actually to write these anisotropies in Fourier space. So you can do this Fourier decomposition, and it should be familiar to all of you. You can Fourier decompose any function. And one good thing about Fourier thing is these equations, like when you write delta square phi is equal to 4 pi g rho. So in Fourier space actually it will become minus k square phi k is equal to 4 pi g rho k. So the differential equation, they actually become algebraic equation and very easy to solve. So it's a very common trick, at least in cosmology, to write equations in Fourier space and then to solve them. So we can do that thing with our equation also, and this equation becomes like this one in Fourier space. Now one thing is that we can solve this exactly without making any approximation, or actually we can make approximation, try to get some solutions. So one thing is that you can see that there is a dot. Dot is a derivative with respect to conformal time eta. When I say theta dot, I mean d theta by d eta. Okay. And here in denominator there will be eta, and that will get multiplied with k. For example, you can order of magnitude, you are just trying to figure out how big various terms are. Okay. So k, due to this thing, k eta may come here. If you put eta from here to here, and then actually you take this limit, which I have written here, whether k eta is smaller than 1 or greater than 1, and you can ignore some of the terms. For example, when modes are outside horizon, this k eta term is less than 1. So in fact you can just drop all the terms which have k. Okay, you can see that life will be simple. If this guy goes away, this guy goes away. Okay. So, and here also, like one solution can be, let us assume that there are no scattering, nothing is here, this right hand side is 0, and this thing is not there. So it is a theta dot plus phi dot is equal to 0. You can find a solution of it. Okay. Or there can be other solution. Okay, here we have introduced one more variable which I called tau, it's called optical depth. So this d tau is equal to, let me go here, I can call this thing d tau. D tau is equal to a d eta and e sigma t. So along the line of sight, photons are coming to us from last scattering surface. If in between there are free electrons, then there will be scattering. Okay, and the density of free electrons may change. Okay, why it will change? Of course, expansion is there. Second thing is called reionization. Okay, if reionization takes place, it will also create some free electrons, and those free electrons will actually scatter with photons and will affect the CMB and isotropies. So this thing is called optical depth, and it is integrated from that epoch, whatever epoch we are interested in, to the present epoch. So then this tau dot comes here, again dot is with respect to this thing, conformal time. Again another thing is that rather than writing this p hat, direction along which the photons are moving, we can use another variable as mu, which is the scalar product of k and p. So we are doing this Fourier decomposition, so there will be Fourier modes k. We are doing integration around them. So here k dot p we can write it as a mu. So no information will be lost. Okay. But anyway, we are assuming that it's a azimuthal symmetry, and this thing has as much information as this mu has. So now our equation is in terms of mu. Okay, so this was for photons. But what about other components? There are baryons, there are neutrinos, there is dark energy and all sorts of things. So corresponding to those species also there are evolution equations or growth equations. I mean, I am not deriving them, I am just writing them. One thing, the dark matter particle, this equation. Okay. I want to mention here that is actually phi and psi are related in this way, that phi is equal to minus psi. Yeah. In our case, what we are using, in that case, that is if there is no what is called anisotropic stress. Okay. So that's a bit technical issue, but you can always assume that in our calculation we are just following the case when phi is equal to minus c. So these equations I am not writing, and you should be able to write these equations on the basis of your course, which is in the morning, that structure formation course, linear perturbation theory course. Okay, they directly come from there, these two equations. And in fact, for baryons, yes, this equation may not come from their unique Boltzmann equation, because baryons they interact with photons. Okay, so there is a collision thing happening. So you must consider this thing tau, optical depth. And again, this theta 1 is like a monopole. This is the velocity of electron. And for neutrino also you can write these equations. So maybe in the first introduction you may not just get with these things, what is happening here, I mean, why so many equations, but these equations are much more simpler than the equation for the photons, and we need it because these guys, baryons, they affect photons. Dark matter, they affect photons not directly, because dark matter particles, they don't interact with photons, but the gravitational field is dominated by dark matter. So they affect photon by gravitational field. Which one?
Theta 1.
Theta 1 is dipole. Theta 0 is monopole. We have a nomenclature in this way. Theta 1 comes from velocity. Okay, I mean somewhere we are assuming that perfect fluid case also. So perfect fluid is something which is characterized by just density and velocity. Okay, it cannot have higher moment. So before decoupling photons, baryons, we consider it as a perfect fluid. So we have these equations. We have equation for photons, we have equation dark matter, we have for baryons, we have for neutrinos, and you can see that these psi and phi are coming everywhere. Okay, but what about the evolution of psi and phi? I mean, how they are changing? That is also important, because ultimately, when we are trying to solve the evolution equation for the CMB anisotropies or for theta, we need solution for phi and psi also. Then the answer is Einstein equation. Okay, so we have to solve Einstein equation for that. So what does that mean? You have G mu nu is T mu nu. You perturb the T mu nu energy momentum tensor, it will perturb the metric. Okay. Again, there are 10 components, and there may be 10 equations, and you may invoke some symmetry, some gauge, something, you may reduce them. And it turned out to be that because we are interested in just phi and psi, two functions, we can live with just two of the components of this Einstein equations. And what are these two components? One is this G00, okay, and one is Gij, and there is a factor Kij minus 1/3. I will show this expression what it is exactly. So I have not written expression for the energy momentum tensor and for its perturbation, but I will some sort of try to make sense of things. So you know this is the metric which I have already introduced to you. We consider this component 00 component. Okay. One thing is that it's a long and tiring exercise. Again, if I give you this metric and I ask you to compute that delta G00. Okay, so it may fill your maybe 10 or 20 pages, and again you may not get the correct thing, not because it's something, but it's a lengthy calculation. Every component has to come correct. So I'm not doing that thing. And second thing is that this component, it is the traceless part of the special component. Okay, you have a tensor Gij. Okay, if you operate this thing Ki, Kj, this operator on this tensor, then it will give you the traceless part of that tensor. I mean, how come it is traceless, you can ask me. Okay, you know what is this delta I? If I write delta up and down I, what will it be? Anyone? What will be delta I? It will be 3, it will not be 1. That should be kept in mind, because the summation convention is there. Okay, any repeated index will be summed. So that 3 will get cancelled, and that's all. If you put just I is equal to 0, this thing is 0. And what is I is equal to 0? It's just this part, diagonal part, it's a trace part. So we pick just a traceless component of this Gij, and then we apply that operator on the right hand side also, and see what we get. So obviously I am not doing that in detail, but I have written for this thing that T00 can be written in this way. Okay, again go back to maybe Jackson or Weinberg Cosmology and Gravitation book and see the exact expression for energy momentum tensor P mu nu, how it is written. Okay, it depends on distribution function, and we are taking the linear limit of that. So distribution function, we just consider the first two terms. So this is the T00 part, and again integration is done over this thing. It is the rho gamma number densities of photons. In my yesterday's lecture I explained this thing, that if you integrate the distribution function, you get this thing, and you get again theta 0, because again here it will be angular integral. Okay, D3P, it has the angular component also. So you get this one, and trace test part gives you this one. Again this is an exercise. You can just see that why this 1 by 3 coming, P square coming, because that is due to this thing. So you just perturb the left hand side, delta G00, delta Gij, this whole guy, delta T0 and delta this thing, and just equate them. You end up with two equations. One for, I should not say one for phi and one for psi, because they are for both. Okay, phi and psi is coming in both the equations. But I don't think there is any surprise. Just forget about the GR and come to the Newtonian thing and look at this equation, what it is. Okay, just phi and psi are equal, for example. Okay, or maybe there is no phi, just Newtonian potential, K square phi psi is equal to G A square and this thing. Or in fact we should look at this equation, which is far better. So it is nothing but this Poisson equation which we have written somewhere, delta phi square 4 by 0. You can see that if this dot thing, there is no time variation of these potentials, this equation will resemble exactly like this equation. Okay, in that sense the Poisson equation which we have generally comes from Einstein equation, you can get it. So these two equations must be solved in order to get phi and psi. Then here it is dark matter density, it's a baryon density, it's a monopole, it's a neutrino monopole, it's a neutrino density, and so this one. So you have to solve these equations, then plug them into the photon equations, and then get the anisotropies. So in order to solve the set of 9 first order differential equations, Boltzmann equation, we need inner cell conditions. That is always needed. How you solve it? Since variables depend on each other, so we do not need inner cell conditions for all. Okay, one thing is related to another thing. In fact, when considering size minus phi, we need just one inner cell condition, and that is for phi or psi, whatever it is. So inflation creates fluctuation in one of these potentials, maybe curvature potential phi. Okay, and you will study that in very detail in inflationary theory, that how some inflationary field, some potential, something will create these metric perturbations. So this I explained. In the very early universe, K eta is less than 1. Most of the modes are outside. These equations become quite simple since we can ignore terms which have K and higher power of K in that equation. So here the theoretical part is some sort of, I suspend it and I go on some definitions. That this I already explained. These are again mathematical formulas, basically just showing them you the mathematical formulas which are textbook. They have nothing to do specifically with CMB. That you have a field theta, depends on the direction, position and time. Either you study its evolution or you study its evolution, or you decompose it into multipole and you actually study the evolution of every multipole. You study how the monopole is growing or decaying, or what's happening with monopole, what is happening with dipole, and what is happening with the higher multipoles. And it turned out to be that the problem is not that easy, because sometimes the growth of one multipole, for example, multipole L, depends on the growth of multipole L plus 1. Okay, and there is all sorts of hierarchy there. But then you have to cut it somewhere. So there is something called strong tight coupling limit. So before decoupling, photons and electrons are tightly coupled. So as I explained that you don't need higher multipoles, you just live with dipole and monopole. But later on you have to worry about them. And so this I explained you that tight coupling limit, only theta 1 and theta 0 is needed. And we can write down evolution equation for theta 0 and theta 1. Okay. One thing is that we have evolution equation, we had evolution equation for theta. We can get that for theta in Fourier space. We can get evolution equation for theta L from the same equation with some mathematical manipulation. And then we can explicitly write these theta 0 and theta 1. Now we are in the limit of this tight coupling. Still, photons and baryons are tightly coupled to each other. Photons are not decoupled. It's before decoupling. We have these two equations. And since we had one equation for the velocity of baryons also, in the set of those equations. So we can plug that thing here. We have three equations, 1, 2, 3 for velocity. And again, it's a mathematical manipulation of all these things. You have two first order equations, and it's possible actually to combine two first order equations and make a one single second order equation, which is done in many times. Newtonian mechanics, you can write V is dx by dt, A is equal to dv by dt. There are two equations, then you write. So this is exactly what we do, and we end up with equation of this type. Okay. Again, this equation may look scary, but it is not actually in that sense. I will explain the terms. This part need not. I don't need to explain this why this thing comes. This is actually due to expansion of the universe. There is always this part, what you call dragging or something. Even if you write equation of motion for a particle in an expanding universe, okay, you always end up with one intermediate term of this type. Like if you write RT is equal to AT into XT, okay, in an expanding universe. AT is this thing, you do it, you differentiate it twice, you see what you get. So that is that term, and again these terms also come naturally. Okay, just forget about, for example, this term and all of these terms, just focus on this thing, theta 0 and this one. What is this? This is the equation of simple harmonic motion, for example. Okay, it's an oscillatory thing. Oscillations are. So this is the equation for the simple harmonic oscillator, complicated by this damping term, which is due to the expansion of the universe. Plus there is a term which is, it's called forced damped harmonic oscillator. So it is damped and it is forced by the psi and phi if they are changing with time. Okay, so they will affect the oscillations, and this Cs is called the sound speed, which is depended by 1 plus 3, where R is the rho b by rho dark matter. So now again, I'm not going into the exact solution of this equation. That's the lengthy exercise. You use these green function techniques. Okay. you firstly compute the equation for the homogeneous part, means put all these things here, then use that and compute the solution for the full equation. And that you can assume that it will be complicated, but I just want to give you the essence of this, what it tells us. So one thing is, just forget about this thing and you can simply say that it should have solutions of this type. I mean, approximate solution of sine and cos type. Okay. Now, here it comes ARS into theta, where RS is called the sound horizon and it is given by this equation. Okay. So at the time of decoupling, now if we think that oscillations are happening firstly, and suddenly the decoupling takes place. For example, let us consider suddenly photons and electrons, they just lose contact with each other. Then these oscillations will get frozen. Okay. So there are oscillations of various modes A. So you can consider it like a set of simple harmonic oscillator. Okay, with wave number A. And when decoupling will take place suddenly, so they will caught at different phases. So this is time. So for example, this is one thing, this is another thing. I am just making it in a very rough way, okay? You should not take it very seriously. So there are just various A mode, maybe A1, A2, A3, and this is time. And I just draw a line here, decoupling. So the oscillations, they just stop. So various modes, they are caught at various, at various phase. Some modes are at their peak, some modes are at their lower values. And that snapshot is what we see in the CMB sky. Exactly we see that snapshot. Okay. So there is a matching between A and L, this angular scale. Or rather than I can write it theta also. Actually L is 2 pi by theta or something, there is a relation of this type. So you can see that why there are n isotropies. At that time there were fluctuation at all k. Okay, these things are called acoustic oscillations. There were acoustic oscillations and there was decoupling, and suddenly these modes were caught at different phases. And the strength of CMB and isotropies at different angular scale is directly related to the fact that where the corresponding mode was. Like monopole was at the peak and dipole was not. So you can see that, so it tells that we should expect these peaks and troughs in CMB angular power spectrum due to this reason. Okay, so again these are harmonic solution. You can see that if you consider this solution for monopole, because we wrote two equations for monopole and dipole. Those are the only multipoles which are relevant in that region. So let us have this monopole, and then obviously this will be dipole, because monopole and dipole will be out of phase. Why? You can see this equation. This tells you that theta 1 is proportional to theta 0 dot. Okay, so they will be out of phase. And one important thing which I want to mention is that there are oscillations in space as well as in time. When these acoustic oscillations are happening in baryon photon fluid, they are oscillations in time as well as in space. Okay, and there will be frequencies of oscillations which very much depend on the sound speed, which I wrote somewhere. This one, and sound speed depend on the density of baryon. Okay, so you can see that the baryon density affects the sound speed, it affects the frequencies, and then it will affect the separations of peak or the position of peak. So it will have some effect on peaks. So here you can easily see that where the maximum will lie. If you write a function of cosec of psi, this thing. So these are the solution for. Obviously, these are very crude solutions. These are like I am throwing almost everything out and just writing these things. But there are other things. But in fact, they give very good picture also. If you compare with the actual results with these just things, then you will say that you actually get a lot of things out of these simple solutions. Okay, so this topic just sort of closes here, that in the baryon photon fluid before decoupling, there were acoustic oscillations. Okay, and those oscillations should be present in CMB angular power spectrum also. Now we go back to the full equation, full Boltzmann equation. Okay, so you can check it that I have just rewritten the same equation in a different way. I have just collected few factors here and there. There is no extra factor here. You can cross check it. And I am just playing with a trick. What is that trick? That the whole thing in right hand side, okay, this one, it actually can be written in this way. You can just, for time being, you can just ignore this part. So we get a equation of this type, this one equal to S, or S is equal to this. Just focus on this equation, just on this equation. So from next equation will follow from this. You integrate it because this is d by d eta. Okay, firstly you have to multiply left hand side by this thing. Okay, with of course positive part here. But divide both sides by this thing. Let integrate out this d eta. Then you will left with this one. Then again this factor goes there somewhere, and it's a very easy exercise. In fact, if you just note this, note down this equation and nothing else, you will actually get this solution. Directly follows. So CMB anisotropies at time eta 0 are related to the CMB anisotropy at time some initial time, conformal time. This part plus the actual integration from some initial time to this time. So here what happens is the first term is 0. Okay. Okay, this thing you can assume this, like when we do indefinite integral, we have one constant of integration. Okay, then we have to compute that and we have to put that. That is exactly what this part is, this constant. Tau at eta 0 is equal to 1 and tau at some initial time is very large. Why it is very large? That at that time photons and electrons are tightly coupled to each other. Scattering is very effective. Due to that thing, there is the exponential part, this one, and this will kill the whole thing. If you get e to power minus some very negative large number, and you get a very clean expression like this one. And these are the CMB anisotropies. Now you can say that, oh, this looks very neat. I can just manage, but that's not the case. All the dirty things are here in this S. Okay, here you can see that this S, in fact, from here to here it is. So we need solution for all these things. But fortunately, you don't have to do this. There are numerical codes which do this thing for you very efficiently. And again, some mathematical tricks. You can see that we write theta. Here we have expression for theta. We can write expression for theta L also. How multiplying equation, this equation by P L mu both sides and integrating over mu, we get this mu. Of course, we use the properties of this P L mu and JL, all these things, basis function, these properties are used, and we have expression for this one. So here there are two terms. One is S term and second thing is JL term. So S depends on the model what we are interested in. It has the cosmology. JL is a geometrical term. So we can compute it in advance and write that into a file and use that for different models. So that will speed up the computation. So there is a code called CMB Fast written by this Jalderagga and Seljak. Okay, so they have one paper which is called the line of sight integration approach. It has more than thousands of citations. It's a very famous paper in some way. So basically in that paper, first time they describe it can be done in a very fast and efficient way, that you break it into two parts, geometrical and source term, compute the geometrical part once and for all, and then do this thing. And then you get all these theta L. But what next? You got the theta L, but you are interested in CL. So there is some calculation which leads us there. Okay, so I just come here again. I change the gear again. This is a CMB anisotropy at present. We are looking at direction n hat. We are adding this temperature. Now we assume that this anisotropy was created at one point of time, instantaneous, when the decoupling happens. That point has a distance of d star from a angular diameter distance. It has a d star. So this event happens here only. Dirac delta will enforce that thing. That this d is from today. This is or in past time. This is d star. This is d integral. D. So it gets contribution only from that point. Okay. So directly perturbations which were here at the time of decoupling, this theta x, they give anisotropies at present. And this equation gives that mapping. So now, if we want to understand the anisotropies at present is theta n, then we must study the inhomogeneities at that time. Why I call it inhomogeneity? Because it has x as an argument. X an argument means something is changing from one place to another place. That is definitely inhomogeneity. So inhomogeneity in photon or in dark matter, they lead to the anisotropies present. Again, in Fourier space, you just write this thing. And again, this is a mathematical formula, purely mathematical thing, nothing to do with physics. That if you have this thing, these Fourier modes, they can be actually written in terms of this YLM thing. Okay. And you plug this part here, then what you get is this one. Okay, you have theta n. There are two decompositions. Just keep in mind, otherwise it can be confusing. One decomposition is the Fourier decomposition here happening, and one decomposition we already know, multiple decomposition. Now we have two decomposition for the theta n hat, and we can actually combine them together, and we can get this expression that coefficients of this ALM are directly related to the theta k inhomogeneities at that time in Fourier space. Now we have expression for ALM, and we know that from ALM how CL is related. I think I have already introduced that. That we can get ALM, you just take them, you get the okay, here by brute force method we are actually plugging this thing here and try to solve it, what we get. Okay, so there was a theta k. So theta k will come two times when you take this thing. So it will give us power spectrum. Okay, and then we get the power spectrum and we get JLK, it will become two times, and we get this expression for this thing. So now there is an assumption. This is the power spectrum for inhomogeneities. Okay. If we assume that the power spectrum is a slowly varying function of k, because this JLK star function, if you look at this Bessel's function, in some books you will find that they are highly oscillatory functions. So as comparison to those functions is a smooth function, then actually we can take this guy outside of the integral. Okay, and do the integral using mathematical identities on all these things. And what we end up with is this one. That CL comes from here. CL is related to this thing. I will again show this thing. It comes this way. Now that is exactly what I was saying, that the L by D star, there is a scale, Fourier scale L by D star. So in homogeneities at that scales are related to the anisotropies at scale N, Cn. So you should understand that the D is a length scale, so anything 1 by length scale is the Fourier mode. Okay, and here we just write this thing, delta T, this thing, L into L plus by 2 pi and Cl. Now most of the time we don't plot Cl, we plot L into L plus 1 by 2 pi into Cl. I will show the experimental plots which are there in research paper. So that is the reason why we do this thing. That this quantity, this delta T square, it gives power in logarithmic mean of L. Okay, so it is useful. But the physical motivation is here. So here basically this is the theoretical part which I add, and there are few references. But I have left a huge part of this CMBR thing because there is another course in CMBR which will be taken by Seshadri, Professor Seshadri. Okay. So I left out many things, including like there are tensor perturbations. I did not talk about them. I did not talk about the polarization at all. This is a huge industry. I did not talk about the systematics. Like there are foreground and other things. Okay, and the most important thing which I did not talk about is how the CMB angular power spectrum, which I will show here. This one, this guy, how it changes with cosmological parameters. What happens if we change the omega variant? What happens with omega dark matter? Omega neutrino, curvature, and all of the ionization, reionization, optical depth. Okay. I think many of these things will be covered in Seshadri's lecture, or you can ask him to explain these things in detail. My point was to come to this thing. My point was to come on to this part, this line of sight integration, to compute it. So now I will introduce few what are called Boltzmann codes. Actually, these are the one is called CMB fast. And second is called CAN. This is latest, this is older one. So what these codes do, you don't have to do all these dirty things in your computer by yourself. Somebody else will do this thing for you. That will be very difficult. These codes are, you can consider them as a black box. These are for black box for you. So these codes, or because this is a rough thing, so I am not writing this thing precisely what it is. these codes take cosmological parameters as input. Okay. And they give you these CL file basically. I will show you that how it looks. So you can play around with this thing that, if you change omega baryon, how this thing is changing. For example, I can tell you that when you change actually the omega baryons, you make omega baryon less. Okay, then oscillations are not that prominent. The height of peaks will get reduced. Okay, and all sorts of other things are there. So there is a code is CLB fast and CAM, and because we don't have here enough resources, like there is a lab there somewhere. You can go there. We can discuss there. But I came to know that they don't have any projection facility there, so I can't show anything to you. And again, there are not enough computers there, so that everyone tries out. But how many of you have laptops with Linux? Can you raise your hand? Okay, very few. Okay, 3 or 4. Yeah, but I encourage you, if you are seriously interested in CMB or this thing, then install Ubuntu or something else on your laptop. Now everyone has very good laptops. And these two codes, they run on laptop. You don't need supercomputer or something very big. So you can play around them. And another thing which is also interesting, actually my lectures were supposed to be on data analysis in CMBI. But that doesn't seem to be feasible here due to various reasons. We don't have enough resources. Maybe students don't have that much background also, and the theoretical background was needed. But actual data analysis, what does it mean by data analysis? I will just give you a glimpse. What are the things you need to know? First thing is that you have to know is programming language, some programming, maybe C, C++ or Fortran, but Fortran is highly recommended. Okay, because many of the cosmological codes are available in Fortran. So, without these things, there is nothing but data analysis. If you are not familiar with this thing, what data analysis you will do. Second thing is that, and again, it has nothing to do with the CMB itself. Whatever research you are doing, you have to be familiar with this. That is research in physics, I will say. Second thing is that numerical techniques. Okay, numerical techniques means numerical integrations, matrix algebra. Okay, solving partial differential equations, Fourier transformations, and all these things. And there is a very good book called Numerical Recipes. So I recommend that book. Okay. You can just go to Numerical Recipes, just write it. It is available in C, it is available in Fortran. It is written by some astrophysicist, and it's a classic book. Okay. So what it has theory also. Like, for example, random numbers, simulations, Monte Carlo, and complete matrix algebra, all things are given. So if you are interested in this thing, then every guy who is interested in data analysis must read this numerical recipe. That I recommend. And these are the two things. Third thing, what is the third thing you should have? Software, packages, because you can't write everything from scratch, and there is no need to write that. For example, if you want to diagonalize a matrix of 10,000 by 10,000. Okay, which is a pretty much a simple case, I mean common case I will say in many research areas. And if you try to write it yourself, it doesn't make sense. So there are professional packages, and I am saying open source and free packages. Okay, I will not say anything which costs money. Scientific packages like GSN, GNU Scientific Library. Okay. I mean, at least at some point of time in future, if you are interested and you find some time, you just Google around, see the LARPAC, what it is. So GSL is GNU Scientific Library. It has libraries of many mathematical functions and all sorts of things. LabPack is a linear algebra package. And of course, numerical recipe also, they also have software with their book, but it is not free. Okay. But anyway, people, if you want to use, so you need this thing. So this is the third thing, which you have these good packages. There are packages, MATLAB, Mathematica, but I will not mention them. I will just mention things which are compatible with C and Fortran. You can call these GSL routines from C or Fortran and all this. And the last but not the least important thing is what you have for data analysis. Last not last, there is another thing also which is computer, and the fifth thing is you should have a computer, in the sense even nowadays if you have a laptop with 2 cores, 4 cores or maybe more than that, you can do many of these things like these Boltzmann codes or CMB fast scan, you can run them. In fact, you can run other codes also there. But I am not familiar with how it works in Windows environment, but as I understand that some of these guys are, these softwares are available for Windows also. But that will be pretty messy because most of the people in the scientific community, they use Linux. And the last thing is, I will now call it last thing. Here is the data. Data analysis, you need data. Okay, if you don't have data, you can do the simulations, you can create your own data. This is exactly when I say that the CMB fast or CAM, it creates these CLs. But in actual case, we have instruments. These instruments, they collect temperature data, and from that we can compute the CL. So there is one observational CL, there is one theoretical CL, and you can match them and see which of the cosmological model is correct, which will be discussed in my next talk. I mean, my next talk will be focused on cosmological parameter estimations mainly. So you should have data, and for CMB, WMAP data is available for download. It's around 1 gigabyte file. You just have to open it. There are a lot of stuff which I will introduce. And this data comes with software also. Software in the sense that Fortran and C programs. And maybe Planck data will also be available. So there are many places where the data is open source for community, and community can download it. So now I stop here. If there are questions, I will take 2 questions. Then we can decide about our next session at 5:30. So are there questions? Or you can think about, you can ask later on.